everybody, and welcome to another edition of Fire Up. I have an extraordinarily good panel tonight. It's me and the guys. It doesn't get any better than that, does it?
Never.
No.
I feel like I'm back home on my show.
So I'm going to first welcome my co-host, Mr. Smokin' Jeremy B. How's it going tonight, Jeremy?
Fantastic. Candy, how are you?
I'm okay. I'm doing okay. And then Mr. Will, how are you tonight?
Glad to be back. Thank you. Thank you, Candy. Thank you, Jeremy. Love talking sports. You know it. I talked about it last show. Can't wait.
Awesome. And then we have special guest Dan. How are you tonight, Dan?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good, Candy. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well. Why don't you tell, since this is the first time on our network, Dan, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your shows and what you do?
Well, I co-host Lions Talk every morning with JB. I am the owner of Von Doom Creations. We do a lot of mini helmets. Right now we're getting into shirts, tumblers, hats, woodworking, resin work. Just anything kind of sports related to it. We're going with that.
Awesome. Sounds cool. Well, guys, we have some awesome topics tonight. We're going to be talking about NFL and tackling players on knees or below. Oof, ouch. We're going to talk about the new Pac-12. And then we're going to talk about a little Caitlin Clark and how we think her influence on the game is going to be here and now that she's declared for the WNBA. So with that, we're going to start off with the NFL and talking about tackling players. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Smokin' Jeremy B for this.
The NFL is trying to get a rule through the owners during the winter meetings, and it has to do with specifically the tackling near the knee or below area because of all the knee injuries that have happened during those segments. Yes, 4 of those over the last 3 years or 2 years has been due to Kirby Joseph. It wasn't intentional. You can go back and watch if you watch the whole video, not just still frame it. But at the same time, I kind of agree with it. But yet, if we keep changing the way people have to tackle, eventually, is it even going to be tackling football anymore?
I'll go back to like the Pro Bowl and do flag football, right?
Yeah.
Dan, your thoughts about tackling knees?
They're basically taking away any way you can hit a wide receiver or a running back anymore. And I don't care what any of the league people want to say about safety. Violence is still what sells football. You take all the violence out and watch the numbers and the ratings drop.
I agree. Hello, Ken. Will, your thoughts about tackling knees?
It's a two-sided coin, but I agree with Jeremy and I agree with Dan. It's going to be so hard to enforce because this is the way you tackle receivers and running backs. Unfortunately, Kareem Hunt got tackled last year and his knee twisted the wrong way, and that didn't look good. And that was probably the big red flag that said, we got to get something done sooner or later. These guys are going to have devastating knee injuries and be out for a while. So, but it's also the way you tackle the receivers and running backs, like I said. So I don't think it gets past this offseason, the rule change, but if there's a way you can demonstrate it with former players and say, we prefer this method over this method, do a tutorial, then we'll see.
So, guys, are we starting to get soft here in the NFL or what? Like, where do you stop it? So you can't tackle the knees, you can't tackle the ankles, you can't tackle obviously the head, and I get the head, don't get me wrong, but where do you stop it? Like you said, Jeremy, like it's going to become flag football or something almost, because football is football. You know, going in that you're susceptible to these kind of, and I will say, how often is it? None of the players are intentionally trying to hurt the other players to take them out for any length of time. All they're trying to do is make a play. Defense is supposed to make a play. Offensive line, they're supposed to protect. Runners are supposed to run. Like Dan said, violence, I hate to say this, sells. Let's face it, in a hockey game, do you want to see them just pass the puck, or do you want to see fights? For the longest time, you want to see fights. I mean, that's what the NHL was, and that's what you enjoy. So I think you're drawing a fine line here in the NFL if they pass something like this, because I think it just changes things, and I think it takes too much away from the defensive players or the people that are trying to, tackle. Because, like I said, otherwise then it might as well be flag football, and that's not what the NFL is or has been. Any other comments from the panel about this topic? Yes, Mr. King. Of course.
Now, if they're going to take away the knee tackle, what are you supposed to do when the running back or the receiver makes himself real small? So the only two places you could possibly hit them is the knees or the head. Is that an automatic foul coming in right there?
Exactly.
Right. I was going to add the same thing. Number one, when you're a smaller defensive back, because most of the defensive backs only weigh 180 to 220 at most. So when they're trying to tackle a 260-pound tight end, what are they taught to do? Go for the legs. As you take out their legs, they can't keep going. And it's a fundamental way of tackling a guy bigger than you. If you take that away and you take that and give the advantage to a 260-pound tight end that all you got to do is shrug you off of his hips, there's going to be a lot more broken tackles in the league.
I
agree. And like we said, where do you stop? Like, where does it stop then? Because now all of a sudden you can't tackle there. Can you tackle at the ankles? Can you tackle at the feet? Can you tackle let's face it, you can get injured a lot of different ways. You can even get injured non-contact in football. Like, it can happen. And do we like to see the injuries that take players out? No, of course not. But it still is that kind of a game. And you kind of learn to expect some injuries, hamstrings, whatever it could be. But I get the whole head and keep away from tackling in the head and using the helmet. I get those. But as far as tackling players around the knees, again, it's part of football. And as long as they're not really trying to take somebody out and take their knees out and really injure them, you got to be careful here, because how are you going to enforce it and everything too? So, okay, well, we have the Pac 2. Let's talk about them and what's going on with them. Smoking Jeremy B, this was your topic.
The Pac-2 commissioner, I can't call him the Pac-12 because there's only 2 teams, is fighting to keep his 2 teams in the Pac-2, or the 2-pack as I like to call it, because there's only 2 teams in it, and that's Washington State and Oregon State, correct?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason why he's trying to keep it going is they're going to try to incorporate a lot of those Mountain West teams and probably Hawaii, just to keep it going, because Hawaii's always been a travel destination for the Pac-12 anyways, for their out of conference. If they add them to the conference, it makes it a little more viable. I think he wants to get it to at least a 6 or 8 team conference to keep it alive.
Dan, your thoughts? There's a reason there's only 2 teams left in that conference.
Because they're the only two that nobody wanted.
Dude, exactly. Realistically, if the conference isn't going to give you a shot into the playoffs for winning it, there's no point for teams to be there.
Mm-hmm.
I pulled the conference.
Will, your thoughts?
Yeah, supposedly they're trying to keep the teams encouraged by media rights, but really, like, and I get it, they're going to try and bring in Mountain West teams like Hawaii and maybe Boise State and these other teams, but like, these games are on late at night anyway on the East Coast, and they don't get a lot of viewers. And for the conference to stay alive, they're going to need 6 more teams to stay relevant in a 2-year period. And you know what? I hate to say this and be negative, but I wouldn't be surprised somehow, some way. I know they were left over because no one wanted them, but somehow, some way, I feel like the Pac-12 or the Pac-2 is going to dissolve and not be a conference anymore.
Okay, so this conference has been in existence 108 years. As 10 of its members are poised to join other Power 5 conferences beginning July 1. The soon-to-be 2-team conference struck a scheduling agreement with the Mountain West for the upcoming football season, and both the Beavers and Cougars will be affiliate members of the West Coast Conference in 12 sports, including men's and women's basketball. Now, they have said that the league, the NC2A, has given them a grace period that allows them to operate as a 2-team conference in 2024 and 2025. But how realistic is it for them to keep going for TV rights, for anything else? Like, that makes it very different. And honestly, as many teams have jumped from one conference to another conference, are we heading to there only being 3 or 4 conferences?
I think so.
Will it become more like the NFL and, AFC and NFC? Like, are we headed towards that?
I have said for the past 2 years, with the way teams have been jumping ship and going specifically, mostly to the Big Ten and the SEC, you're going to see if it continues this way and NCAA keeps changing everything so often and enforcing their rules in ways that are unlike, they may secede from the NCAA and form their own college football league.
Yeah, exactly. And personally, I think that it seems obvious. No recruits are going to say, go to the Pac-12 and say, oh, Oregon State, Washington State, yeah, I want to play, unless it's like a hometown kid who only gets offers from those two, because I think they're going to lose so many recruits because of this.
Yeah, I mean, if you actually look at it, Washington State and Oregon State, do you know what they get? It's kind of like the difference between the recruits that go to Michigan State versus Michigan.
Yep, leftovers.
All you gotta do is look at the recruiting class is different. The 4- and 5-star recruits that are in the area, 9 times out of 10 will go to Michigan, Ohio State, or some other school in another state where the weather's nicer. The lower end 4, 3, and 2-star recruits go to Michigan State most of the time.
The leftovers. Yep. No, I agreed. I was just saying I agree with Jeremy.
The leftovers. That's horrible.
Yeah,
That's horrible talking about people like that, Will.
Sorry. Truth hurts sometimes.
It does.
It does. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit of basketball now. Iowa star Caitlinclark will enter the 2024 WNBA draft, she announced today. She is the all-time leading scorer in women's college basketball with 3,650 points. She only needs 18 points on Sunday against Ohio State to pass Pete Maravich's NC2A record of 3,667 points. How do we think she's going to fare in the WNBA? And do you think she has increased the heightened awareness of women's college basketball and WNBA? And do you think she's going to influence young girls to follow in her footsteps. This time, we're going to start with Dan.
Well, she's definitely heightened in college basketball for women. But, in my personal opinion, that is the height of the sport for women. College basketball is where they get all their attention. The WNBA, nobody really cares about it because it's a newer thing. You don't have all the highlight stuff to catch people's eye. It's more of a fundamental game that nobody cares about anymore. They want long-range threes and big dunks. And I think Caitlin a hell of a player. I think she's going to be a star in the WNBA. But I don't see one individual person being able to change the entire landscape of the game to make it where it's attractive to people to watch.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair. Will, your thoughts?
As you guys know, I'm on a WNBA, NBA, NCAA show with our friend Megan. And so we talk about Caitlin and the other women, and Caitlin's phenomenal. And yes, people say, oh, back then Pistol Pete didn't have a three-point line. Well, we can't help that now because times have changed. Sports have changed from the NBA, NFL, MLB. You know what I'm talking about. But she has brought attention, not only her, but Paige Beckers, Angel Reese. They sell out arenas. There's been a lot of women the last few years who have brought the women's basketball game going up and up and up, and Caitlin's only making it better. Like Kobe. Kobe was a girl that his daughter was going to probably play at UConn or one of the major basketball women's schools. And yeah, it's getting eyeballs all around the country. Like I said, it's selling out arenas. And it's going to be very interesting because she's projected to go number one, which I do think she will, to the Indiana Fever. And she'll be playing with Aaliyah Boston, Nalissa Smith, Kelsey Mitchell, and Erica Wheeler. And you know what? Do I think she'll average triple doubles like she does in college? No, but do I think she'll have a good stat line? Yeah, I'm expecting maybe like 15 points per game, maybe 13 points per game, 6 assists and 2 rebounds. But yeah, she's bringing eyes around the country. Men, women, NBA players sometimes go to WNBA games. Like it's awesome what she's doing.
Smoking Jeremy B. Your thoughts?
The Iowa has gotten to the point where courtside seats are $10,000 a piece to watch Caitlin Clark right now. The nosebleeds are around $1,500 a piece. It's nuts how much it's costing to go to that small basketball court. But at the same time, she kind of dominates the news for Iowa basketball right now as a whole. The Iowa's men's basketball team hasn't been doing that good, and it's all about Caitlin Clark. I think she has the chance to help the WNBA become more relevant than what it is. But you know what I want to see her drafted? The girl that flipped her off last year after the national championship game. I want her to go to the team that is their rival because that would make for some heated stuff every game.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, that's true. Okay, so now to my favorite segment, the segment that I came up with, which is where we all talk about my town. And it's either a story from the town you currently live in or the town you grew up in, favorite team that you grew up watching or whatever. So we are going to start with Mr. Will.
Cool. So I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and the Charlotte Hornets are planning to hire Brooklyn Nets executive Jeff Peterson as the head of basketball operations to replace longtime basketball operations Mitch Kupchak, who is, as we know, with the Lakers. And Mr. Peterson is 35 years old, and he has connections with the Hornets owner, and team governor Rick Chanel back to their Atlanta days when they were both working for the Hawks. And he was also instrumental of bringing Kyrie Irving to the Brooklyn Nets. He also has a connection to current Hornets Seth Curry. When Seth Curry was in Brooklyn, Mr. Peterson was working for the Nets. So it's cool to see a young mind who's 6 years older than me go into a big role like this in a state that loves, eats, breathes, and sleeps basketball in North Carolina. And hopefully this brings a winning culture to the Hornets. And they haven't made the playoffs in years. So hopefully it brings more people to games and sells more tickets and has people buy more merch and get us more good players so we can build up and become a more prominent basketball team. So that's going on in Charlotte.
Okay, Dan, what's happening? First of all, what is your town and what's happening there?
I live up in Valley View, Pennsylvania, the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
Middle of nowhere. And the closest thing, anything sports related to me would be Penn State. And the only good thing coming out of there is Chop Robinson looking like Micah Parsons at the combine. That is it.
Is there a team that you follow more that you would like to talk about though?
I'm a big Giants fan. I grew up in Point Pleasant, New Jersey, and I'm a big Giants fan on that. Right now, I guess that entire team is a total mess. But our coach was rated one of the most liked coaches by players in the entire league. We may be able to keep our star running back. I pray to God.
Yes.
We don't want him going to Baltimore.
No.
But
okay.
Other than that, really not much.
Okay. Jeremy.
Well, here in Michigan, we got a lot to talk about. It looks like the Red Wings, even though they lost tonight, are still in pretty good control of making it as the 8th seed in the playoffs. And we all know how that worked out for Florida last year. So I'm not saying they'll win it all, but the chance is there. So you're saying there's a chance, which means if the Tigers do as good as they're projected to do, Michigan, for the first time that I can remember, can have 3 teams in the playoffs in their respective seasons in one calendar year.
That's awesome.
That'd be pretty amazing. We all know the Pistons aren't going to be in the playoffs for probably for the next 10 years, the rate they're going.
Is true. That is true. Okay, so I struggled with what to come up with, I'll be honest with you guys tonight, because I do live in South Florida, so there are the Florida Panthers. They're doing well. FAU men's basketball is doing good. USF men's basketball is doing good. In fact, we're going to the FAU game on Saturday, so I'll be sitting down on the court taking pictures again. And then but my heart is in Wisconsin because that's where I grew up. So I am, yes, Packer fan, to the dismay of some of you. But I'm going to talk a little bit about Bucks. So I read a report the other day that they were talking about Damian Lillard and how he's lonely in Milwaukee. Well, of course he's lonely in Milwaukee. His family doesn't live there. His family still is in Portland. His mom, his kid, his wife. Like, who even made that a story? But I will also say, for all of the naysayers of Doc Rivers, and I will yet to hold my opinion, but the Bucks defense has moved from number 22nd up to number 6 in the NBA since Doc Rivers. So he has improved the team. Now, whether he can take us all the way, because there are a lot of people that think Doc Rivers cannot coach in the postseason, that has yet to be seen. But he has made an improvement over a team that got rid of the defensive player of the year and started out really bad because they moved the defensive player of the year. So they have improved that. But good luck to all the teams as March Madness is going to start. They're going to start their teams are playing in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I want to say, of the seasons, and then their conference
2
tournament's
weeks.
coming up. 2 weeks, well,
I believe.
it is a good time for college basketball, and it's a good time to be watching college basketball because they are vying for things. And like the NHL, they're going to be vying for playoffs. This is the time of year you see good games, and teams try and rise, or you're going to find them fall flat on their face and not go anywhere. So I would just say go out and enjoy. And there's nothing like going to see some of these in person. Yes, you can watch things on TV, but there's something to be said about actually live. You know, when we had COVID and everybody couldn't go, you had to watch things on TV, but go see some of these. Go support some of the college games and see the excitement. But my one thing is if you do go, do not storm the courts. Don't injure players. Please. Safety. You can be excited and you can go down on the court, but you do not have to storm the court. There is a difference. Dan, I kind of saw you.
Yeah, that whole don't injure players. I watched that clip of that guy like probably 15 times, and he body checked the fan. He put himself in harm's way.
Yeah, the fan reacted. That's how the punch or push to the back happened. And then his knee got hurt. It wasn't because it was just initiated by the fan, but at the same time, they got to do something to kind of regulate it to get the opposing team off the court a little better. Maybe get some of the backups already in the locker room and then just leave it where the 5 guys that are on the floor there with the coach. Do something to limit how many players are on the floor before the fans storm especially at a big rivalry game like that, because that's when it's going to happen. It doesn't happen at your normal games. It happens at those big rivalry games, especially when one's way underrated compared to the other team and they knock them down when they're a ranked team. I don't care who you are. Those kids are hitting the floor. Yep. They're going to be like a down with the sickness, you know.
I've stormed many of fields. No, I was saying I stormed many of fields.
Mm-hmm. I was at the USF FAU game, and for any of you that know college basketball or know the state of Florida, USF is in Tampa on the West Coast, and FAU is in Boca, and they are on the East Coast. FAU was ranked, USF was not. USF has a 10,000 plus seat stadium. FAU has like a 3,000 seat stadium. They played at USF. USF stuffed that stadium. It was full. It was the largest crowd they've had. It was over 10,000. And yes, USF came away with the win. And so, yes, he stormed the court. And it was interesting because I was literally taking pictures on the court. So they came and they stormed around us. And it was interesting how they tried to still usher the FAU team off the court because obviously they wanted to celebrate with their home court. And they had some security, but not enough that they were still getting pushed around and stuff like that. So yes, I think something has to be done. I'm not exactly sure. If there's somehow they've got to be able to hold people off until people go. Jeremy wants to say something. I can see it.
Oh, 2 hours ago, broken by JPA Football Report, which is a Jassery Football that writes for the NFL Network's website. The Lions are expected to meet with Amon-Ra, St. Brown's agent, at the NFL Scouting Combine to discuss a long-term contract.
Something
I was saying that's what Amon-Ra wanted. He said repeatedly on his own podcast he wants to be a Lion for life. This is breaking news. That's the only reason why I'm saying it. Long-term is not 3 years, people. That's that 5 to 7 year range. I'm thinking it's going to be like 5 or 6. I don't think it'll be 7, but 5. I'm happy with that. Even at the $25 million, with the way they can stretch that contract out, it's a good move.
I love it.
Okay, breaking news. You heard it here. So Guys, it's been a great show. Any other comments? Anybody wants to come up with? Point out? Nope. Well, then we're going to go around the room, how they can get a hold of you and how they can see you, see your shows, how they can. Dwayne Keaton says 7 years, 25 to 28 million.
Well, the rumored amount was 25 million, and Amon Ra already said that's perfect to him on his podcast. So I think it's going to stay right there. I think it was just a matter of the years because the rumored contract was 3 years, 25 million a year, not including signing bonus or guaranteed money. So I think we're going to be looking at that 5 to 6 years. That's where I'm thinking it is.
Okay. Let's just start with our guest. Dan, how can people get a hold of you? How can they subscribe to your channel? Tell everybody.
Well, you can subscribe to Kneecap Biting Smoking Jeremy B on YouTube. His kneecap biting page there. Von Doom Creations on Facebook, X, and my favorite is TikTok because that's where I want to do everything from now on. It's so much more fun.
Okay. Will, how can people find you or get a hold of you?
Wednesday nights, you can find me on the NFL Roundtable, hosted by Smoking Jeremy B and Von Doom, aka Dan Leonard. You can find me here on Thursdays or on the Sip Off, hosted by Megan Price. Fridays, you can find me on the Lions Fan Cave chat, hosted by Jeremy B again and Von Doom, aka Dan Leonard. Again, thank you, everybody. Much love. I appreciate all of you.
Sounds good. Jeremy.
Well, as you've already heard, you can find me at Kneecap Biting with the Motor City Lions, which is my YouTube page, as my other two guests here have already alluded to. You can also find me on Motor City Kneecap Biters, on Lions Villain Squad, on NFL News and Rumors. I'm all over the place on Facebook. Then there's, of course, Smoking Jeremy B on X and on Instagram. And, of course, on all things South Florida Tribune, especially when it's Fire Up. I'm always on Fire Up, occasionally on Inside the Pigskin, occasionally on, The Professor and the Pupil.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's all the shows that I pretty much am a part of in the South Florida Tribune network, which is on the South Florida Tribune channel. And if you haven't done it, guys, go ahead and go down there and hit that red subscribe button. And if you haven't done that, hit the like button while you're at it. And if you know some sports fans, because as you see, we don't just talk football, we don't just talk Lions, we talk all around the NFL, we talk all around the NBA, WNBA, NCAA. We go all over the board because that's what good news programs do. And let's give it to my host, Andy. But before I take off, I want to say the same thing I do to all the fans. Try every day to be a better person than you were the day before. It's the only way to make the world a better place. It starts in here. Much love.
Awesome job, guys. Okay, so for me, you can find me Fire Up on Thursday nights. You can also find me usually Tuesday nights on 3 Chicks in a Pod or Chicks and Salsa. We're just chicks talking sports. You name it, we talk it. You can please subscribe to that red subscribe button. I think it's down there by Will. If you see it, that means you haven't subscribed to us. Click it. Like us. Share us. If you like to talk baseball, we have 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. If you like football, we have Inside the Pigskin. If you like just general sports, we talk Sports Exchange on Wednesday nights. You can always see, last night they did an episode of Real and the Rare where they do one-on-one with book authors. And they talk about books. So last night it was about a guy that he wrote a book about boxing and how you can use that as your workout. Instead of, doing your traditional weights or this, talks about working out as a boxer and how that's a great exercise because it exercises every part, mind and body as well. So go check that out. But previously tonight was Pundit's Pundit. You can sometimes see Fire Up Michigan, Fire Up Wisconsin, Fire Up Florida. We typically do Fire Up basically by itself Thursday nights, but you never know. We might sprinkle in something else. We also have Motor City and the Mad Mouth Show. Oh, we have all kinds of different shows. But our shows are always on YouTube. We do put them on our website, which is www.southfloridatribune.com, where we have good writers such as Jeremy. We have my husband, Scott, and George Eichhorn, who is normally on this show. We have to wish him a happy birthday because
Happy birthday, George.
on the 29th. So he's probably like 15 right now.
Yeah.
That many birthdays. But so happy birthday, George. We miss you. And Ralph, we miss you too. You are on vacation, on a much needed vacation. So let's see. You can always catch our broadcast on podcast, wherever you get your podcast, Radio, Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever. Guys, go to our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where you can find their writings. You can also find, we have a couple different NFL teams that send us their transcripts. So we had the Jags sent us transcripts this week as they talked from the combine. We also have FAU sends us all kinds of things. USF, the Panthers sends us things once in a blue moon. Let's see who else sends us. You just name it. Go over there and check us out. See what it is, and you can see some of my pictures that I've taken. So thank you guys. This has been a great show. I appreciate Dan, you coming on as a guest. Thank you very much for coming on with us. Will, of course, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And of course, my co-host, thank you, Jeremy. Where would I be without you? Good thing I don't have to find out right now. So
I do all right in a pinch.
you do good. For Jeremy, Dan, and Will, thank you. You guys have a great week and catch some good sports. Thanks.